Welcome back to The Psychologist, where intuition meets investigations. My name is Marie St. Louis. I am a clairvoyant and medium, and for many years I have worked quietly behind the scenes on missing persons cases and cold cases. Before we begin, every episode is for entertainment and discussion purposes only. Today's episode is part 2 in the Suzanne Clark Simpson case. And before I go any further, I need to correct something important from my previous episode. In episode 4, I mentioned December 2024 as the date of my second submission connected to Suzanne's case. That was incorrect. The correct date was December 5th, 2025. On December 5th, 2025, I submitted a separate set of psychic impressions and an AI-assisted geographic summary by email to an agency connected to Suzanne's case. I also shared that information with an individual connected to the case. That date matters because this was not my first look at Suzanne's case. This was a later submission, a separate email with new impressions, new geographic patterns, and a new AI-assisted summary. There is also one timeline detail I did not include in episode 4, part 1. According to public reporting, after Suzanne left the Argyle that night, she went to HEB with her young daughter before returning home. I'm mentioning that here because it's part of the public timeline, but this episode is not meant to repeat the entire case timeline. Part 2 is focused on the December 5th, 2025 psychic impressions, the AI-assisted geographic summary, and the later connections that stood out when I reviewed them. When I work on a case, I write down what comes through exactly as I receive it. I do not try to polish the words in the moment. I do not try to force them to sound logical. Sometimes the word comes through phonetically, symbolically, or something that sounds like a road, subdivision, business, river, landmark, or something else completely different. Its meaning may only become clear later on. I also want to say this. Once I submit my impressions and the AI summary, I do not follow every case daily or weekly. Many times I move on to the next case. It may be months or even years later when I pull up my original submissions and compare them to public updates. That is what happened here. When I reopened the December 5th email, the impressions returned like fragments scattered across a map. At first, that may sound like a list, but stay with me. Grouped together, these impressions began to form a very specific kind of place. Not one random word, not one random road, but a pattern, a development edge, a gravel road, a fork, a property corner, a place where old rural land seems to be turning into new construction land. That is why I'm going to organize these impressions in clusters so you can hear the pattern the same way I saw it later when I reviewed the December 5th submission. All right, so let's begin. Cluster 1. The first cluster involves roads, movement, and direction. In the December 2025 email, I documented turn to the left at the fork. Shallow road at off concrete ends gravel road. 45 to 52 minute drive. To east, 10, 12, 13 miles or minutes. Adjacent to the other property, northeast property, and southeast Durgan. Those impressions gave me movement. They felt like someone traveling, turning, branching off, moving east, approaching a property, or ending near a road that changed from finished to unfinished. The phrase, turn to the left of the fork, stood out because it was specific. It suggested a split, a place where the main road continues but another road or path turns away. And when I later reviewed the AI-assisted summary, AI connected that type of impression to older ranch roads, private roads, development roads, and partially finished roads in the Bernie, Leon Springs, Fair Oaks Ranch, and Kendall County corridor. That is not proof, but it did create a movement pattern, a road pattern, and the feeling of a place where someone would need to know which way to go. The second cluster was even stronger. The cluster involved construction and unfinished development land. I documented new home construction, like construction began then halted. Concrete blocks still stacked up and back. Pipes in the ground don't match. Tool marks all over the soil. New home builders staking out claims for lots. Soon a 2-lane road becomes 4, and Pebble Creek development. When I look at those impressions together, they all point to the same kind of place. Construction land, development land, marked lots, widening roads, utility work, disturbed soil, and materials left out. But the strongest feeling was that the work had started and then shifted somehow. Not abandoned forever, but unfinished, like it started, paused, interrupted, and then changed. That is why the phrase, new home construction, like construction began, then halted, felt so important. It did not feel like a fully developed neighborhood. It felt like the edge of one. The AI-assisted summary connected this cluster most strongly to areas involving Durango Reserve, Shooting Club Road, Pebble Creek, and the East Bernie Leon Springs development fringe. Not as confirmed locations, but as possible geographic patterns. The third cluster involved land, terrain, and concealment. These were the impressions that felt heavier. Now stay with me, because these are the exact words and phrases I documented. Buried earth over her, hidden terrain, on a steeper angle, remote property, small water source, behind fencing, corner of property, remote, lightly trafficked area, and area close to where was searched before. These impressions felt different. They did not feel like public roads. They felt like property, private land, hidden terrain, a place where someone could be near development but still out of view. The phrase corner of property stood out because those areas can be overlooked. A fence line, a slope, drainage area, dirt pile, rocks, brush, construction materials, or the back edge of a property that does not draw attention right away. And the phrase area close to where was searched before made me pause. It did not say the exact search area. It said close. That matters, because sometimes a place can be searched without every slope, fence line, culvert, road, back corner, or construction edge being fully resolved. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I'm saying that was a feeling in my psychic impressions. Close to the searched area, but maybe not exactly where people were looking. The fourth cluster involved water references and phonemic place names. These impressions came through as Bandina Falls, Media River, Lucky Springs, Highland Drive, Mill Line, Min Line, and Lasner Road. Some of these words may not be exact, and that can be common with psychic impressions. Sometimes I hear a name phonetically, sometimes I receive only part of a word, sometimes the word comes through slightly wrong, while the sound still matters. For example, Bandina Falls may be close to Bandera Falls. Media River may be close to Medina River, and Southeast Durgan may be close to Durango. I'm not saying those are confirmed, but when the sounds are grouped together, AI began seeing a broader hill country pattern. Bernie, Bandera, Medina River, Fair Oaks Ranch, Leon Springs, Durango Reserve, Pebble Creek, Highland area properties. That is why I do not dismiss unusual words too quickly. The word may not be perfect, but the sound, direction, and surrounding impressions can still point toward a meaningful pattern. The fifth cluster involved temporary activity structures and unusual property markers. I documented where tents are or were up again, fire pits multiple, they don't make sense, boarded up windows, what an eyesore now, storage front road property, meme industries, and secrets behind the blue turquoise door. Tell her to spill the beans. This cluster felt different, less like raw land, more like human activity, something set up, something taken down, structure, storage, an industrial or frontage road feeling, an unusual business-like phrase, a door, a woman, and a secret. The phrase, where tents are or were up again, felt temporary, perhaps search-related, construction-related, property staging, or something else. But the impression was that something had been there before or had been put back up again. Then there was fire pits, multiple, they don't make sense. That impression stood out later because public reporting described a burned site connected to the case. I'm not saying my impression proves anything, but when a document impression says fire pits and later public reporting discusses a burn site, I do consider that a possible public reporting connection. What made the impression stand out to me was that it was not simply fire. It was not simply smoke. It was fire pits, multiple, they don't make sense. That feels more specific. It suggests something unusual about the fire area. Too many, out of place, not matching the property, or not making sense in context. According to public reporting, investigators later connected Brad Simpson to a burn site at a Bandera County property. Reports stated that Texas Rangers located a ground-level burn site and recovered a burnt laptop and multiple cell phones belonging to Brad Simpson. This is one of the public reporting connections that stood out when I reviewed the December 5th submission. The boarded up windows impression remains open. I have not seen a confirmed public validation for that one, but it remains documented. Boarded up windows, what an eyesore now. That suggests a changed structure, a house, cabin, outbuilding, a neglected property, a vacant building, or something unfinished or abandoned. Then there was the turquoise door. Secrets behind the blue turquoise door. Tell her to spill the beans. That felt like a person, possibly a woman, a witness, or someone connected to a house, door, room, property, or conversation. The phrase spill the beans was direct. It suggests someone may know more than they have said. I do not know who that refers to, and I will not guess, but it was documented. The sixth cluster involved timeline impressions, behavior, and possible legal movement. These impressions included, I suspect he told her it was laundry that day. How convenient. Parts of the timeline is wrong. He leaves out some on purpose. He's going to choke up and appear to cry, but it doesn't mean a thing. Illegal property search, seizure, according to him. And September 2021 paperwork, doc, signed and delivered. These impressions were not about terrain. They were about behavior, paperwork, timeline, and legal movement. The laundry impression felt like a possible explanation, something someone may have said to account for movement, timing, or an errand. I am not presenting these as fact. It remains all documented psychic impressions. The timeline impression also stood out. Parts of the timeline is wrong. He leaves out some on purpose. Again, that is not evidence, but as a documented psychic impression, it belongs in this episode. Then there was the behavioral impression. He's going to choke up and appear to cry, but it doesn't mean a thing. That one is sensitive. I cannot know what anyone truly feels. And unless public reporting confirms that behavior, I'm not calling it a validation. It remains open. But the legal portion of the impressions did stand out later. One phrase I documented was illegal property search, seizure, according to him. That wording is important. It came through as according to him. To me, that sounded like someone objecting, challenging evidence, someone questioning how something was collected, handled, viewed, seized, or turned over. Later, public reporting did show disputes over evidence handling, chain of custody, and legal issues raised by the defense. So I would call that a possible legal pattern validation. Not proof, but a documented psychic impression that later stood out besides public reporting. The September 20th, 21 paperwork impression also stood out because it was not just court. It felt like documents, something signed, delivered, formally moving. Later, public reporting showed September 21st and September 22nd, 2025 became important around discovery deadlines and case movement. That does not prove the impression, but it may be a timing connection. The January 2026 legal movement also stood out. I want to be accurate. I'm not saying the trial began in January. Public reporting showed the case moved again in January 2026 through court proceedings and delays tied to evidence review. So the possible validation is not January trial, it is January legal movement. That distinction matters. As of May 2026, public reporting indicated a trial date had still not been set because extensive evidence remained under review. So I'm not overstating this. I'm only noting that the psychic impression involving legal movement, paperwork, and timing later stood out beside reports about discovery, evidence, court delays, and scheduling. The seventh cluster involving older land, history, and former use. These impressions came through as Ket Settlers Homestead. Used to be old campgrounds long ago, not anymore, families long gone. Those phrases gave the land a history, older families, old campgrounds, homestead land, property repurposed, divided, sold, changed. That one became one of the strongest themes in the AI summary. Old rural land becoming new subdivision land, roads being widened, lots being staked. Construction starting, stopping, and shifting. That pattern appeared again and again. Then there was the unusual phrase, peptulas all around. I do not know what that means. It may be petals, it may be a Spanish-sounding word, it may be symbolic, or it may be visual. Flowers, debris, a pattern, a sign, or a word I heard imperfectly. Cannot say, but sometimes the most uncommon words matter later, so I'm documenting it exactly as it came through. The final cluster involved numbers and distances. I documented 6446 and 6449, 8334 and 8343, 15714, 15716, 15719, 1737, and distances 3.5, 3.7, 4.1, 5.7. I'm not forcing those numbers into one meaning. They could be addresses, road numbers, lot numbers, distances, documents, dates, coordinates, or they may not connect at all right now. But I preserve them because numbers often make sense later on. Sometimes they sit there quietly for days, weeks, months, or years. Then one road sign, one property record, one address, or one page number brings them back into focus. I've seen it over and over. When AI organized everything, it created 3 possible zones. The strongest zone was Durango Reserve Phase 2, Shooting Club Road, Pebble Creek Development, the Northeast Leon Springs and Southeast Bernie area. The second zone was Lost Creek, Fair Oaks Ranch, Highland area properties. The third related zone was Bandera Falls, Medina River, Pipe Creek, and the wider Bandera to Bernie corridor. So when I step back and look at the December 5th submission as a whole, the strongest pattern is not just one word. It is the repetition. Roads, forks, gravel, fencing, pipes, concrete blocks, development land, property corners, steeper terrain, a small water source, and an area close to where they had already been attention. That is the pattern that stood out to me. In closing, Suzanne was a mother, a loved one, a woman whose lives matter. Her family deserves answers, and until those answers come, her story remains unfinished. If you have any information regarding Suzanne Clark's disappearance, please contact the appropriate law enforcement agency. I will include that information in the video description. I welcome respectful thoughts in the comments. Do you think the construction land clusters matter? Do you think the repeated references to gravel roads, fencing, pipes, unfinished development, and property corners are meaningful? Or do you think these impressions formed a pattern worth looking at more closely? As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching and listening. This is The Psychologist, where intuition meets investigations.